This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hello and welcome to Paranormal Pets. I'm your host, Brandy Stark, and on this episode, I am at the home of Arin Greenwood and her pets, and we are going to talk about her book, Your Robot Dog Will Die. She has also written some articles on animal cemeteries, and then we'll pick her brain a little bit about any animal ghost stories that she's heard. So we'll get started with that right after these messages.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynavite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynavite.
Dynavite for life.
Pick up 2 tubes of Doggo Suds.
Get the third tube free.
Peppermint, tea tree, lavender, Doggo Sud shampoo.
Made with all-natural coconut, jojoba, aloe. Great for healthy skin and soft, shiny coats.
But no itchy, harsh chemicals.
Lather up, rinse away.
Try Doggo Suds. Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynavite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
And welcome back to Paranormal Pets. I am here with Arin Greenwood, and any noise in the background you hear is her puppy, who is...
This is Murray, who is very upset about people outside on the lawn. Sorry about that.
I think they're used to, I've heard some of my own recordings, and the pugs are in the background. So you now have a different animal to listen to, which is great.
He's got a lot on his mind.
It's all good. So you are the author of a book called
Your Robot Dog Will Die,
which is a really fascinating book. And I know you spoke to my U.S. St. Pete lit class about this book. And what is it about exactly?
Your Robot Dog Will Die is a novel, a young adult novel that's set at a dog sanctuary in Florida that's home to the last living dogs on Earth, plus some cutting-edge robot dogs, and then a community of people who are there to take care of them.
And that actually brings up a great question as to what happens to these robot dogs after they die, but that's a different podcast for a different day. But what got you inspired for this topic?
You know, there were a whole bunch of things that came together that got me interested in writing this book. One was I had read all these articles about Buddhist monks who were holding funerals for robot dogs, and I found this just profoundly moving, the idea that these mechanical things had captured us deeply enough that we wanted to hold these kinds of rituals for them. And I understand it, and I also find it, you know, to be part of this sort of complicated relationship that we have with technology. So there was that. And also, I had been working at that point for a while as an animal welfare journalist. I was the animal welfare editor at the Huffington Post. And so I had gotten just really deeply involved with and completely fascinated by the worlds of animal sheltering and animal rescue and the people who just give their whole lives to protect animals. And so I wanted to sort of pay tribute to them. And then on top of that, I just love animal sanctuaries. And when you're writing a book, you get to live sort of in your head in a new setting in this world that you create for a year, however long it takes to write the book. And I just wanted to live in an animal sanctuary for a while. So I decided to set a book there.
You read a little bit of an excerpt for us, and it has some really interesting, and it kind of starts on a sad note with the idea that these prototypes essentially are tested by their human caretakers for about a year, and then they're shut down. I don't know the rest of the book, so no spoilers, but it's kind of I think that's kind of an interesting idea because, of course, people already have difficulties with letting go of their animals even now.
Oh, it's awful. It's the worst part of having animals is having to let them go.
It is. It is. I mean, the nice thing is you do get all those years of love, but I think with a robot dog, particularly with 1 year, that can be pretty tough. I mean, I understand it because as you know, I have pocket pets, and pocket pets are notoriously short-lived just because in the wild, for example, the rats are about 9 months, and when you have domestic, they live 2 years. So you've doubled their lifespan. Now, I've had some make it to about 3.5, but, you know, it's still kind of this very quick turnaround. So, and that took some adjusting.
Yeah, I bet.
But I think what was really neat is that in the time that they're here, they're so happy. You know, and so do you find that kind of played a part in your book?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I do feel like like one of the great gifts that we have is to be able to give animals good lives while we get to do it. I hadn't thought about it quite like that, but I think that's a really lovely way to think about it, that, that part of our job as the humans in their lives is to make sure that they enjoy those lives.
All my pets right now are a little disgruntled at home because today was cleaning day, but they have a nice clean cage.
How dare you sweep up their stuff?
They just got it right, and then I come in and take it all apart again.
Brandy.
Yes, and even the turtle gets a soaking. Every 4 days, you're supposed to kind of... So she's mad at me, too.
Oh, no. How do you win her back after she gets mad?
They're kind of little cranky old people, so you just kind of wait them out a little bit.
You
Take
give
them
them some
outside
good
with the sun. Yeah, it works out. So you have a really strong connection with animals, which I think is pretty interesting. When did you start as an animal advocacy? When did that play in your life?
I don't know that I can pinpoint it to just one time. I mean, I always say I was the little kid who was like jumping out of her stroller to try to, pet all the dogs. I mean, I've just been crazy about animals my whole life. So much so that I became a vegetarian when I was just 6 years old. I mean, that was, it was like a really primal sort of a thing in me that I just loved them. When did I become an animal advocate? I don't know when that would be. When I was in law school, I used to be a lawyer, and in law school, I adopted a pit bull, and she sort of opened my eyes up to sort of the discrimination that pit bulls face, the laws that ban pit bulls, the way that people treat pit bulls, the way that they are afraid of them or impute characteristics to them that aren't there. And that started getting me more interested in kind of that side of things. I don't know exactly when I became an advocate. I mean, I'd like to think always, but professionally, I started writing a lot about animals. I mean, I had written some about animals sort of for a very long time. And then at the Huffington Post, I became the animal welfare editor, I believe in 2012.
Okay.
So that was sort of the first time that it was in my job title, stand up for animals. But I don't know, I'd like to think that it had been going on for longer than that, just, as in my life.
Right. Well, and that's because we all play a part.
Yeah.
Right. And actually what you described about pit bulls is pretty interesting because I had one grandmother that had Dobermans.
Yeah, right.
And they were another one. Yeah. And I have a friend that does Rottweiler rescue. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that same, issue where they have such prejudice against them.
Well, and there's prejudice against them. People make all kinds of assumptions about them, make all kinds of assumptions about the people who live with them and love them. And then there's laws that ban them places. Dobermans and Rotties are two other types of dogs that get banned places or get regulated by what we call breed-specific legislation. Then, on top of that, there's what we call private law. So, there's apartments that won't rent to people who have these types of dogs. There's, HOAs that refuse to let people have these kinds of dogs. And it's all, frankly, just nonsense. I mean, there's no difference between these dogs and any other types of animal.
It almost sounds like what we talk about in paranormal investigation with the psychological stigma. So it's, if a property has a history of a death, then that property becomes stigmatized. And so it sounds like that's happened to the breeds as well.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Interesting. I know my grandmother had her last Doberman was named Ashley. She had show Dobies, actually.
It's adorable.
Oh, yeah. And she loved Ashley so much that she couldn't even bear to, because, they have their ear clip, and she couldn't do it.
Okay.
So she had these big floppy ears. She didn't look like a Doberman. I think that kind of threw people off.
Yeah.
But her last one, she just couldn't do it. And she loved Ashley. And that Dobie lived to be like 15. It was incredible.
Really nice. I love when I see Dobies whose ears aren't clipped and their tails are long. I mean, it makes me happy to see people let them be sort of the dogs they were born to be.
That's it, and I think by the time she got towards the end, I mean, there were no more shows or anything. And that was kind of I think she had two that were really, truly show quality at that point. And then that was about it. I know the pugs are not show dogs.
Right.
they are what they are, and you just go with it, right? So it's a household of 4-year-olds, and it's fine. But it was kind of interesting just to see that dichotomy. So now, with your experience, I thought it was really interesting because you mentioned animal cemeteries. And that's why I was like, oh, I got to get her on this podcast. So I know you did an article about animal cemeteries. What can you tell us about those?
Oh, gosh. This article that I wrote, I think it was back in 2012. It was a long time ago that I wrote this, and it was when it was about a place in Maryland called Rest Haven Memorial Gardens that had just opened up a cemetery where people and their pets could be buried together. It wasn't a separate pet cemetery. It wasn't, it wasn't somebody sneaking in some ashes of a beloved pet, but it was actually set up so that pets and people could share a plot together. And I thought it was just this beautiful kind of tribute to the role that animals play in our lives. They're beloved family members, and this is another way of recognizing that. So back when I wrote this article, there were hardly any places where you could do this. I mean, it was a real novelty having this kind of a cemetery being set up. Since then, as I understand it, it's become a little bit more common. New York subsequently passed a law that actually allows people to be buried with animals. I think it's still banned in many states, but more cemeteries are starting to open where you can do this. And again, I really just think it's one more kind of acknowledgement of just how much we love our pets.
It is. I know my mother has everything set up for cremation, and she's got a chamber actually that she's paid for at her church, but she has had special pugs over the years. And both of us have done pug rescue, so we've always had a grumble, each one of us, so it's like, it is Pug City.
So cute.
Pugs are so special. They have their own dialogue. They actually, they're not puppies, they're puglets. I'm not making it up. They're actual
really adorable.
If you really want some fun, check out the Order of the Pug from the 17th century, because the Freemasons were outlawed by the Pope, so a group came together and said, well, if we can't be Freemasons, we're going to have the Order of the Pug, and they actually wore, and I'm dead serious, they wore dog collars, and they scratched at the door to be let in.
Brandy.
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
I'm going to go Google that as soon as we're done with this podcast.
It is one of the most fascinating things. But anyway, because we kind of had these pugs in mass, what I always find really interesting is the really special ones.
Yeah.
Of course, she's had cremated, and she keeps her cremains, and I have instructions that when her time comes, when she's cremated, she wants ashes from these pugs buried with her.
Yeah.
And even if I have to sneak that in, I'm going to do it. I don't think the church will care. But it was really wild. And, it's kind of neat when you do get that ability to take your pugs or your pets or somebody special with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you want your companion with you, right? I mean, they live with you, they sleep with you, you walk them, you love them. I mean,
And it's so unconditional that we get back from them. So, there's articles that have been coming out like crazy lately about how people prefer their pets to other people. And I kind of get that, if I could just stay home, number one, the pugs would be very much happier because that is their ultimate goal, I'm pretty sure. But
to keep you at home, keep you locked up at home.
Yes, to be their servant, it's fine. But, secondly, I think my stress levels would drop. I gotta say, as a professor, it is stressful. And, I actually had a student tell me the other day, intelligent people don't like to work with others. And I'm like, thank you, I guess. But again, it's that notion of the pet. And so being able to connect and bring them, and have that closeness.
Yeah.
And of course, even the idea that the grave is a portal to the other world. That dates back to the Greeks, the Romans, the ancient cultures, and even the Celts. You would find tombs that had animals buried with them. So I can't believe it's taken us 2,000 years to get around to this again, because the animals became your companions in other life. So,
were they the protectors in those more ancient graves, or were they companions, or were they both?
It was both, yeah. And usually it was a dog, most likely, more so than any other animal. But in part it's because dogs are in liminal states, so they sense the other side, and you find dogs as guardians with Hades, the Zoroastrian bridge to the other world, and even with Sedna, the Inuits, right? So they are kind of those guardian figures. But what we're going to do for just a moment is we are going to pause for a commercial break, because we get one more of those, and then when we get back, we're going to ask you about any animal ghost stories that you might know. All right. We'll be right back after this message.
Now, time for something really scary. A word from our sponsors. Paranormal pets will reappear before you can say Bigfoot. Don't run away.
Put on a perfectly possum pet party. Having an awesome birthday or adoption day celebration for your four-legged friend? or just want a fun excuse to throw a fun party with your friends from the dog park. Deck out your party with Molly and Bandit Pet Party accessories. Party products designed specifically for pets. There are wearables, including adjustable pet party hats, bow ties, and tutus. The photo prop kits include funny glasses and hats. The party supplies and decorations include coordinating table covers, party banners, cake decorations, and treat bowls, cups, and bags. Everything you need to create great memories and Instagram-worthy photos. They're available in 2 colorful themes, tropical and fireman. It's a dog's life. Celebrate it with Molly and Bandit Pet Party at mollyandbanditpetparty.com/petlife.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Did you hear that? Our commercials have mysteriously disappeared. Paranormal Pets is back with our haunted host, our ghost host,
Brandy Stark.
All right, and welcome back. So, my last question for you. All right, so do you have any experience or know any stories of animal ghosts?
Well, I hope my mother is not going to mind me telling this story. If you do, I'm sorry, Mom. I tell it out of love.
It's all right.
So the pit bull who I adopted in law school, her name was Barky, and she just, she didn't just change my life, sort of opened me up to all kinds of things, but she also changed my whole family. This is a long story, but for a variety of reasons, I ended up moving off to a little tropical island for several years. About 1.5 years after I graduated law school, there was a long quarantine for pets on this island, so I was only supposed to be there for 1 year in the beginning, and so my parents agreed to look after Barky for 1 year so that she wouldn't have to go into quarantine. In any case, I ended up being out there for 5.5 years, and Barky became the family dog. And Barky just had, the most incredible life living with my parents. I mean, they cooked her meals and took her every place, and just, you've never met a dog who's been loved so much. And Barky died about 5 years ago. She got congestive heart failure, and she had to be euthanized. And I was home with her in Rhode Island. I came home to spend that last time with her, and my parents were there. My brother was living in Turkey at the time. He Skyped in so that he could be there.
Aww.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody loved Barky so much. My brother actually is now a lawyer for Best Friends Animal Society, so he does animal advocacy too. Anyway, this is all just to say we all just love Barky so much. And after she died, my mother swore she still saw her around the house. She heard her. She, sensed her in Barky's favorite place. I'm going to cry talking about this. I still miss her so much.
It's
such a good dog.
It does.
Yeah. And who knows if she was actually there, if she wasn't. But, Barky had such a good life living at my parents' place. I wouldn't blame her if she wanted to stick around a little longer.
And again, that's where things get really interesting because I have a Paranormal Pugs page. And, initially it was tongue in cheek. And in fact, that's how I got this podcast because they interviewed me for this page. But so I put up this essay that I theorized, for example, that pugs, would not sense ghosts and, they're artificial breed and
right.
Nobody knows why they're here and, all that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden people started sending me stories. Okay, so I revised my essay. Apparently pugs can sense ghosts. Yeah. Okay, so I kind of tie them into the idea of a child in many ways that maybe they don't know that they're not supposed to sense them, or maybe there is a little bit of dog left in them, even though we all know they're small, slightly misshapen humans. But after that, I started getting people sending me stories of their pets as ghosts, right. And I would start getting emails from folks because at that time I think it was like 2004, and there was nothing out. It was a brand new concept, really, that people, and of course the internet was beginning to spread as well, but I would start getting emails from folks that they were so relieved to have found the website, and they would start sending in stories of their pets, not seeing ghosts, but coming back.
Right.
And so I actually started as a good academic would, particularly because I'm usually more qualitatively trained than quant, but humanities based, you study culture. But, I kind of started tracking some of these ideas. And usually when it's a dog, it's somebody that hangs around for a year or two. There are some that have lasted longer, but normally I hear that about cats. Mm-hmm. Cats, if they show up, they'll be there for 6 months to a year and then they're out, unless they decide to stay forever. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like one of two things and that's it. But, I would get reports of people hearing the toenails clicking or the collar. Right. or even feeling somebody brush up against them or hearing them walk down the hall. I mean, it was just so impressive. I mean, it really does show that bond. And heck, man, they're even loyal after they go, which I think is fantastic. So,
well, have you studied that at all? Have you gone to investigate whether they're there?
We have done a few locations where they're supposed to be haunted by animals. I don't necessarily have the best of luck with it, although people will sense if the animal is there or not. But it's kind of hard to say, if you're here, can you let us know? Sometimes they will,
right.
But I can't say, are you a cat? Are you a dog? I mean, and see if that comes across. But we have been on several cases. For example, there's a place in Gulfport that has Morris the cat, who was a beloved cat who passed away, and they actually put a monument up to him. And it said that they would still see, little movement around this monument.
I love that
from the
monument.
Cat.
That's one of the things that when my husband and I moved to this area from Washington, D.C., we first lived in Gulfport. And one of the things that let us know that Gulfport was our place was when we saw that little monument to Morris the cat. We were like, yeah, I think we'd be happy here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, we did do that investigation. Pennsylvania is supposed to be haunted with some cats. I'm trying to think, we've done some cases, and I will tell you, I have seen one shadow animal, which was kind of weird. It was kind of a cross between a raccoon and a bobcat, and you're like, okay. But a shadow animal, they're kind of this whole new field that I'm trying to really research and open up. I honestly think they're probably wild animals crossing over, but every now and again we catch a glimpse of them, but they always seem to be moving. And we were doing this house in Temple Terrace, and we're in the bathroom, and I'm got my Sony Handycam infrared, and all of a sudden, I swear to you, I saw this thing running straight at me. And in fact, I was so certain it was coming, and I'm looking through the camera, the screen, not a lens at that point, but that I'm putting the camera down to step out of the way, and there was nothing there. But it actually, I mean, I don't see things. I'm not necessarily psychic, which is fine, but it was actually black with black spots, and I don't even know. That doesn't,
Yeah, how is that even possible?
So, I started doing the research there, and so it just kind of continues to build. I mean, I think I have been brushed up against on an occasion or two by a cat. You feel the chills on your leg. But really, with the amount of stories, there's only three things that could be happening. So either it's a projection element, it's suggestion, or the animal's there. And I'm going to go with C. The animal is there. So, I even had one rat that I saw 3 times in the week after he died, and that was it. But it was enough that I was like, huh. And he was phenomenal. He was one of the best, most personable animals I had ever known. And unfortunately, he only made it a year because he had ended up with a tumor. But, they just let you know.
Yeah.
And
they're wanted to stick around with you.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're much cooler about it than we are.
Yeah.
So, I think we can learn a lot from our pets. So, but anyway, now that we're towards the end of the interview, can you please tell us how folks can order your book?
Oh, sure. Your Robot Dog Will Die is in a lot of different bookstores. So if you have a local bookstore, you can go in and ask for it there. If you prefer online, it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Super easy to find there, or on IndieBound if you want to find independent bookstores that have it. Yeah, Your Robot Dog Will Die.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on Paranormal Pets. I'm going to remind all of the listeners out there to please support rescue. There's Pug Rescue of Florida, there's Rat Rescue of Florida, and there's plenty of rescues out there. So until the next episode, enjoy yourselves and happy haunting.
Pet Life Radio presents Paranormal Pets, where you can always expect the unexpected. Each week we'll discuss all aspects of weird or spiritual animal encounters, ghosts, totems, psychic animals, animal souls, animal angels, and animals in religion, with a little cryptozoology thrown in. Step into the supernatural world of pets every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.